Tuck Everlasting, Chapter 7. It was the strangest story Winnie had ever heard. She soon suspected they had never told it before, except to each other, that she was their first real audience, for they gathered around her like children at their mother's knee, each trying to claim her attention, and sometimes they all talked at once and interrupted each other in their eagerness. 87 years before, the Tucks had come from a long way to the east, looking for a place to settle. In those days, the wood was not a wood. It was a forest, just as her grandmother had said, a forest that went on and on and on. They had thought they would start a farm as soon as they came to the end of the trees, but the trees never seemed to end. When they came to the part that was now the wood and turned from the trail to find a camping place, they happened on the spring. "It was real nice," said Jessie with a sigh. "It looked just the way it does now. A clearing, lots of sunshine, that big tree with all those knobby roots. We stopped and everyone took a drink, even the horse." "No," said May. "The cat didn't drink. That's important." "Yeah," said Miles. "Don't leave that out. We all had a drink except for the cat." "Well, anyway," Jessie went on, "the water tasted sort of strange. But we camped there overnight, and Pa carved a T on the tree trunk to mark where we'd been, and then we went on." They had come out of the forest at last, many miles to the west, had found a thinly populated valley, had started their farm. "We put up a house for Ma and Pa," said Miles, "and a little shack for Jessie and me. We figured we'd be starting families of our own pretty soon, and we would want our own houses." "That was the first time we figured out there was something peculiar," said May. "Jessie fell out of a tree." "I was way up in the middle," Jessie interrupted, "trying to saw off some of the big branches before we cut her down. I lost my balance, and I fell." "He landed plumb on his head," said May with a shudder. "We thought for sure he'd broke his neck, but come to find out, it didn't hurt him a bit." "Not long after," Miles went on, "some hunters come one day at sunset. The horse was out grazing by some trees, and they shot him. Mistook him for a deer, they said. Can you fancy that? But the thing is, they didn't kill him. The bullet went right on through him and didn't hardly even leave a mark. Then Pa got a snake bite, and Jessie ate the poisoned toadstools. And I cut myself," said May. "Remember, slicing bread." But it was the passage of time that worried them most. They had worked the farm, settled down, made friends. But after 10 years, then 20, they had to face the fact that there was something terribly wrong. None of them was getting any older. "I was more'n 40 by then," said Miles sadly. "I was married. I had 2 children. But from the look of me, I was still 22. My wife, she finally made up her mind I'd sold my soul to the devil. She left me. She went away and she took the children with her." "I'm glad I never got married," Jessie put in. "It was the same with our friends," said May. "They come to pull back from us. There was talk about witchcraft, black magic. Well, you can't hardly blame them. But finally we had to leave the farm. We didn't know where to go. We started back the way we come, just wandering. We was like gypsies. When we got this far, it did change, of course. A lot of the trees was gone. There was people in Tree Gap. It was a new village. The road was here, but in those days it was mostly just a cow path. We went on into what was left of the wood to make a camp. When we got to the clearing, the trees, the spring, we remembered it from before." "It hadn't changed no more than we had," said Miles. "And that was how we found out. Pa'd carved a T on the tree, remember, 20 years before? But the T was just where he'd done it. The tree hadn't grown one whit in all that time. It was exactly the same. And the T he'd carved was as fresh as if it had just been put there." Then they had remembered drinking from the water, they and the horse, but not the cat. The cat had lived a long and happy life on the farm, but had died some 10 years before. So they decided at last that the source of their changelessness was the spring. "When we came to that conclusion," May went on, "Tuck said, that's my husband, Angus Tuck, he said he had to be sure once and for all. He took his shotgun and pointed at himself the best way he could, and before we could stop him, he pulled the trigger." There was a long pause. May's fingers laced together in her lap, twisted with the tension of remembering. At last she said, The shot knocked him down, went into his heart. It had to, the way he aimed, and right on through him. It scarcely even left a mark, just like, like you shot a bullet through water. And he was just the same as if he'd never done it. After that, we went sort of crazy, said Jessie, grinning at the memory. Heck, we was going to live forever. Can you picture what it felt like to find that out? But then we sat down and talked it over, said Miles. We're still talking it over, Jessie added. And we figured it'd be very bad if everyone knew about that spring, said May. We begun to see what it would mean. She peered at Winnie. Do you understand, child? That water, it stops you right where you are. If you'd had a drink of it today, you'd stay a little girl forever. You'd never grow up, not ever. We don't know how it works, or even why, said Miles. Pa thinks it's something left over from some other plan for the way the world should be, said Jessie. Some plan that didn't work out too good. And so everything was changed, except that the spring was passed over, somehow or other. Maybe he's right. I don't know. But you see, Winnie Foster, when I told you before I'm 104 years old, I was telling the truth. But I'm really only 17. And so far as I know, I'll stay 17 till the end of the world. Now that we've finished reading Chapter 7, turn to the page in your Tuck packet that says Chapter Titles. We've been doing such a good job on these. Remember that you want your title to be like a main idea, or the name of a character, a quote, the name of a place, or an image or event that happens in the story. I've left you with some of the examples that I've been hearing in class for Chapters 1 through 6 that I think have been really good. It's your turn now to add a title for Chapter 7, the one that we just read. I would be thinking a lot about how the Tuck family is telling Winnie about their lives and what has happened to him. Think about what a good title might be and write it on the line for Chapter 7. We're going to read Chapter 8 before we complete the rest of the components of this packet. When you're ready to go, unpause and we'll move forward. I really like doing those chapter titles because they really help me remember what's been happening in each of those chapters. It will come in handy when it's time to review for a unit test. Let's read Chapter 8. Winnie did not believe in fairy tales. She had never longed for a magic wand, did not expect to marry a prince, and was scornful, most of the time, of her grandmother's elves. So now she sat, mouth open, wide-eyed, not knowing what to make of this extraordinary story. It couldn't, not a bit of it, be true. And yet, it feels so fine to tell somebody, Jessie exploded. Just think, Winnie Foster, you're the only person in the world, besides us, who knows about it. Hold on now, said Miles cautiously. Maybe not. There might be a whole lot of others, for all we know, wandering around just like us. Maybe, but we don't know them, Jessie pointed out. We've never had anyone but us to talk about it to. Winnie, isn't it peculiar and kind of wonderful? Just think of all the things we've seen in the world, and the things we're going to see. That kind of talk will make her want to rush back and drink a gallon of the stuff, warned Miles. There is a whole lot more to it than Jessie Tuck's good times, you know. Oh, stuff, said Jessie with a shrug. We might as well enjoy it, long as we can't change it. You don't have to be such a parson all the time. I'm not being a parson, said Miles. I just think you ought to take it more serious. Now, boys, said May. She was kneeling by the stream, splashing her face and hands with cool water. Whew! Such weather! She exclaimed, sitting back on her heels. She unfastened her brooch, took off her shawl, and toweled her dripping face. Well, child, she said to Winnie, standing up, now you share our secret. It's a big, dangerous secret. We got to have your help to keep it. I expect you're full of questions, but we can't stay here no longer. She tied the shawl around her waist then and sighed. It pains me to think how your ma and pa will worry, but there's just no way around it. We got to take you home with us. That's the plan. Tuck, he'll want to talk it out. Make sure you see why you can't tell no one. But we'll bring you back tomorrow, all right? And all three of them looked at her hopefully. All right, said Winnie, for she decided there wasn't any choice. She would have to go. They would probably make her go anyway, no matter what she said. But she felt there was nothing to be afraid of, not really, for they seemed gentle, gentle and, in a strange way, childlike. They made her feel old, and the way they spoke to her, the way they looked at her, made her feel special, important. It was warm, spreading feeling, entirely new. She liked it, and in spite of their story, she liked them too, especially Jessie. But it was Miles who took her hand and said, "It's really fine to have you along, even if it's only for a day or two." Then Jessie gave a great whoop and leapt into the stream, splashing mightily. "What'd you bring for breakfast, Ma?" he cried. "We can eat on the way, can't we? I'm starving." So with the sun riding high in the sky, they started off again, noisy in the August stillness, eating bread and cheese. Jessie sang funny old songs in a loud voice and swung like a monkey from the branches of trees, showing off shamelessly for Winnie, calling to her, "Hey, Winnie Foster, watch me!" and "Look what I can do!" And Winnie, laughing at him, lost the last of her alarm. They were friends, her friends. She was running away after all, but she was not alone. Closing the gate on her oldest fears as she had closed the gate on her own fenced yard, she discovered the wings she'd always wished she had. And all at once she was elated. Where were the terrors she'd been told she should expect? She could not recognize them anywhere. The sweet earth opened out its wide four corners to her like the petals of a flower ready to be picked, and it shimmered with light and possibility till she was dizzy with it. Her mother's voice, the feel of home, receded for the moment, and her thoughts turned forward. Why, she too might live forever in this remarkable world she was only just discovering. The story of the spring, it might be true, so that, when she was not rolling along on the back of the fat old horse by choice this time, she ran shouting down the road, her arms falling out, making more noise than anybody. It was good, so good, in fact, that through it all, not one of them noticed that the man they had passed on the road, the man in the yellow suit, had crept up to the bushes by the stream and heard it all, the whole fantastic story. Nor did they notice that he was following now beside the road far behind, his mouth, above the thin gray beard, turned ever so slightly toward a smile. What an ominous ending to Chapter 8. I can't wait to find out what's going to happen next. Go ahead now, decide what would be a really good chapter for that chapter, or a title for that chapter, excuse me. It was certainly a good one. I have to think about it. Go ahead and pause, write your chapter title, and move on when you're ready. The next thing that we are going to do is write down our discussion question for today. We see that the question for Chapter 7 and 8 is, what effect did the spring have on the Tuck family? Give at least 3 examples. We turn now to day 5, and we write the question down first, leaving room for us to be able to answer. What effect did the spring have on the Tuck family? Give 3 examples. When I think about this chapter, and the one before it, I have a few different ideas. I know that in the beginning, the spring made them very confused. Some of them were excited to be able to live forever, and some were frustrated about the possibility of living forever. These are 3 different things that they felt, but I'm going to support them with specific examples. Go ahead and write your response to this question in complete sentences. When you're ready to move forward, unpause and start again. Now, it's time to add to our character charts. We can add some things about the Tuck family. For instance, that they drank from the spring and were able to live forever. We might add some information about May Tuck. Perhaps a little bit about Winnie Foster. See if you need to add anything about Jessie. For example, that he's a show-off. Or about Miles, that he's more strict than his brother. There's really nothing else that I need to add related to the family besides what I learned in these chapters. Once I've done with that, I'm ready to move on to my questioning chart. I'm going to add to my chart 3 questions for day 5. And we're going to walk through each of those questions. Now that I'm ready to do my questions, I make sure that I've labeled that I'm going to do 3 questions for day 5. I need to think of a right there, a think and search, and an on my own or author and me question. I'll write the question here, and then I'll write the answer to that question here. I need to complete this whole chart in order to get credit for my homework.